Okay, I saw this fight on the YouTuber card that the Zone did the other night, and I know a lot of people are complaining about all these YouTube fights happening on the Zone at the moment. In any event, this fight between Hasim Rahman Jr. and Greg Hardy. Now, I've never seen Greg Hardy fight before, but I subsequently found out that he is a former gridiron player, played American football, and he then went into mixed martial arts and he was in the UFC for several fights. He had several contests there, and now he's trying his hand at boxing after being cut from the UFC. Now he is an enormous man, about 6'5", over 300 pounds, shades of Jarrell Miller, although he's not as fat as Miller. There's a higher muscle versus fat ratio with this guy than there is with Jarrell Miller. Now, in the first round, he looked absolutely useless. He looked like he was going to get chinned. And I saw him get chinned actually by that guy in UFC. Is he from Samoa or New Zealand or somewhere like that? And he had this slugfest with Hardy where Hardy wobbled him, but then Hardy went charging in for the finish. And that guy, the New Zealander or Samoan, whatever he is, hit Hardy in the eye, dropped him heavy, and the fight was over. It's the guy who drinks from his shoe. I forget his name. But yeah, I saw that fight where Hardy got chinned. Of course, that's with little 4-ounce gloves, right? Hasim Rahman Jr. was obviously hoping to try and do the same thing, catch Hardy coming in, overcommitting, and hit him flush in the face. Well, he actually caught him several times in the first round of the fight, but the punches didn't have the desired effect. I thought I saw a little wobble in Hardy's legs from one or two of the shots from Hasim Rahman Jr., but he was undeterred and he kept pressing the action and imposing himself on Hasim Rahman Jr. Then in the second round, he managed to pin him on the ropes, punch his gum shield out, and then drop him with a counter right hand. And the thing that was very impressive to me about Hardy, and obviously this is an athlete, this is a guy coming from an American football background, and perhaps questions need to be asked here. I'm not making any accusations. But when you look at Shannon Briggs and his history of failing multiple PED tests over the years, steroids and other things, and you look at the fact that Briggs was very close with Jarrell Miller, of course he's from New York too, and apparently hangs around with all these big guys. Hardy is a former NFL guy, right? You wonder what's going on in that circle there. So that's all I'll say. I'll just leave it at that. But what was impressive to me about Hardy, obviously not his boxing skills, but his energy levels for such a big man. I know it's only a 4-round fight, but people, the size of him, over 300 pounds. And after the fight, he was like dancing in the ring and doing his little, his little shuffle, his little moves. I was like, wow, this guy's got bags of energy for somebody this big. Very impressive if he's doing it clean. In any event, he beat Hasim Rahman Jr., who I'm sure would have hoped to have won this fight against the guy who's coming from a different sport. Hasim Rahman Jr. has never been any great shakes, to be fair. I saw him get knocked out by Tommy Morrison's son, who doesn't look very good himself. So I never expected Hasim Rahman Jr. to go anywhere. But this will have been, I think, quite embarrassing for him to be losing to Greg Hardy. Now, one of the funny things about Greg Hardy in the past couple days is predictably he's called out several names in boxing, including Tyson Fury, but he also called out John Fury. Yeah, he called out John Fury in this interview. He said he would fight Tyson or John Fury. Now, of course, he would fight Tyson Fury because he wants that payday. But calling out John Fury, as crazy as the world is, I'm sure it's not crazy enough for John Fury to be going in there and fighting a guy like Greg Hardy. Okay, because realistically, this guy would destroy John Fury inside a boxing ring at this point. John Fury's nearly 60. If it was a prime John Fury back in the 90s against Hardy, maybe John Fury can outpoint him over the distance. But then again, I wouldn't completely count Hardy out in that situation either. But right now at 60, John Fury gets his head taken clean off by this guy. And this guy is no great shakes in boxing, but he's an enormous man and he's powerful. And he can definitely take out a 60-year-old John Fury, either in a boxing match or in the street, in a no-holds-barred anything goes on the cobbles or on the hard road. This guy can beat John Fury in any type of fighting situation. I have got absolutely no doubt. Remember, this guy has got not only the NFL background, the UFC background. So he can grapple and he can, do whatever. He's tremendously big and strong. And he's clearly got heart himself. I mean, you look at his fights in UFC, even though he lost several, he showed plenty of heart. And here he is against Rahman Jr. He should be a fish out of water fighting the boxer, but he managed to go in there and get the job done. So if by some bizarre set of circumstances he ends up in the ring against John Fury, I know who my money's going on. It's definitely Greg Hardy. But the reason I say this fight should never happen is because it's very dangerous for John Fury. Forget about what John Fury wants. The public, whether it's the boxing fans or it's the fans of YouTube boxing, you really want to see a 60-year-old man go in there against a 34-year-old man who's this big and powerful and active? If John Fury's foolish enough to respond to this guy's call out and somehow, some way step to him in a street situation, then hey, it is what it is. But if it's a thing where it's an organized fight in a boxing match and people are going to pay and there's going to be a broadcaster involved in all this, that should never be allowed to go ahead, people. Come on. So anyway, that's my take on it. In terms of who he could realistically fight going forward, I think he's a fun addition to the heavyweight division. The more the merrier. I don't expect him to do anything great. I think that when he comes across anybody of any note, he'll probably get chinned, right, like he did in UFC. But while he's around, he's this bombastic character. He's not quite as bombastic as Shannon Briggs, but, he's a loud, brash character. I know he's got some controversial things in his background. I'm not sure whether the situation he was involved in, let's just say, I'm trying to choose my words carefully here, but you guys know what I'm talking about. I'm not sure if that legal situation that he was involved in, where he was meant to have done something to someone, was the reason he got cut from UFC. It might be. Those of you who have knowledge of it, let me know in the comment section below. So yeah, I know he's got this kind of dodgy background, but doesn't Mike Tyson have a dodgy background? Mike Tyson's background was more than questionable, but yet people were still happy to see him step in the ring and fight people, and they still tune into his podcast. And I'm not just talking about I'm not just talking about the Desiree Washington thing. There are multiple women in Mike Tyson's background who have said many things about him, and he's admitted many things in terms of the stuff he's done to people. So there's no question that Mike Tyson has done at least the same things that Greg Hardy has done. But somehow Tyson gets a pass. Greg Hardy, of course, hang him high. It's like, okay, the selective outrage. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I think he can be involved in some fun fights at a certain level, this Greg Hardy character. And it's just interesting seeing a guy this size, over 300 pounds, bearing down on people and seeing how they cope with it. Why not throw him in against Jarrell Miller? Clash of the Titans, two juggernauts going head to head. I'd watch it. Jarrell Miller hasn't looked great since his comeback. I mean, he went the distance with a guy who Fraser Clark knocked out in a couple rounds in his next fight. So he went the distance with Miller. Next fight, he goes in against Fraser Clark and gets chinned in a couple rounds. So Miller hasn't looked great since his comeback. Maybe they're friends, I don't know, because again, the link being Shannon Briggs, perhaps they all move in that same circle. But if somehow, some way, they decide to fight each other, I think it's a nice bit of entertainment. I think it's fun. I'd like to see the two big guys swing it out in the ring. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. If you're tired of the biased narratives and mass censorship on mainstream platforms, and you want to be part of a community of critical thinkers who love free speech just as much as you do, then come and join me on Patreon and access my weekly no-holds-barred, censorship-free podcast where we lift the lid on a wide variety of controversial topics. It's not mainstream friendly, it's not politically correct, but that's the whole point. We dare to stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Hatman Hot Topics. You'll gain access to a minimum of 2 hours of exclusive content every single week, including podcasts, videos, interviews, live stream Q&As, as well as my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Not to mention a vast back catalogue of hundreds of hours of previous episodes. You can listen via the Patreon app with the option to download in high quality MP3. We've also got an Element group where you can come and chat and hang out with myself and other members. Unlike Discord, it has full end-to-end encryption, is decentralized, and it's 100% censorship free. You can also send voice notes as well as much larger audio and video files than you can on Discord. So come and sign up on Patreon. There's no contract, there's no commitment. You can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a cup of coffee. So I'll see you over there. I'm out.